Hello and welcome back to Wisdom in Action, the podcast where we explore what it takes to bridge the gap between knowing and doing, because that's where the real wisdom is born. I'm Ostra Putninya, resilience coach and podcast strategist, and I created the space to have honest conversations with real experts and bring you practical insights you can apply, not just think about. Today, we are joined by Larisa Makuh, a CEO and founder of Abundance Academy, an evidence-based master results coach, an NLP and hypnotherapy trainer with over 26 years of experience helping high-performing entrepreneurs and professionals reprogram limiting beliefs, overcome procrastination, and turn clarity into aligned action. Larisa, welcome to Wisdom in Action.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Agree. So to start us off, what is one piece of wisdom that changed everything once you started applying it?
Study every day. One of my mentors that really changed my life. I've had so many different people that I've worked with and studied and trained under over the years, but one of the key turning forces in my life was Mr. Bob Proctor. And I remember he gave us this message, but one of the podcasts he was guesting on prior to his passing a few years ago, someone asked him, like, what's the one piece of advice you'd give? And he's like, study every day, study every day, study every day, no matter what. And that was a practice that I had fallen into because under his presence, under his leadership, under his organization, that was an expectation. And it's something I'd always wanted to do. I'd gone to seminars. I'd been like, oh, I want to have a better morning routine. I want to do this, but how can I waste? That was my thought. That was like my thinking. How can I waste so much time? Because it's going to take me away from all the things on my checklist that I have to do. But when Bob said study every day and I practiced study every day, he gave me permission to do something that I'd secretly wanted to do. And it changed my life. And every time I did make those commitments prior to, my life was great. But then I'd fall off the wagon and then, oh my goodness, drama, trauma, whoever, you've all been there before. But things started to sneak in. And so study every day, study every day, study every day. And there's more to it than that, but if you remember that, that's the starting point.
What was it that helped you to start doing it? Or because a lot of times there's two decisions. One is to want to start to do it, and the actual doing of it or starting to take the first step, especially when it comes to changing your behavior, especially with all the stories that we might have in our heads about justifications or reasons why we don't have time and all the other stuff. What were some of the things that were helping you to actually change that behavior?
There was a point, probably a couple years prior to falling into this habit on a regular basis where I worked with a coach and she was a Tony Robbins coach. And I don't even remember what we were working on, but she made me go through Tony Robbins' Time of Your Life program. And she said, listen to this every day, do the thing, listen, do the thing, follow the system. And for a couple of months, I literally studied and dissected that program. I immersed myself in it and I'd gone through waves of other programs, but for some reason, that one under her guidance, because we were doing ongoing coaching, she gave me specific homework. She cracked the whip. She was hardcore. And because I did the work, I don't even remember what our objective was, but we didn't have a money goal. We didn't have a goal. I was just like, I just need some kind of coach. I need something better in my life. And I had probably more than doubled my income within those 2 months. And that wasn't a goal, but because of the work I was doing, I had actually quit another position that was very profitable and managed to double my income in that period of time. And so there were so many things that were illogical about the strangeness that was happening. None of it was part of the plan, but because I kept going back to doing consistent work, strategic work, systematic work, and maybe we'll touch on some of those things. I'm saying them very deliberately. It worked. There's a difference between just like, oh yeah, I'll just follow intuition. I love intuition. And when there's a little structure, it can work so much more powerfully for you. We need structure. We need you can't see my T, but this is my structure. And inside the T, oh, you can see a little bit. The T is my flow. The T is my flow. And we have that. You can't have a you can't have a river without the riverbanks. And I think sometimes we forget that.
So you touched on quite a few things that we can explore deeper there. First one that I would want to touch on is the clear action, or getting clarity on what actually is the action. because after that comes taking the action. But how to get clarity on what is the action to take, even before we start to tackle taking it?
I think we need clarity on what we want and where we're going. Like, you need to know where you are, get a benchmark. And it's not rocket science. It's like, where are you? If you want to have a financial goal, well, go check all your bank accounts, go check all your investment accounts, do an analysis of all your assets. So you need to know your assets, liabilities, income, and expenses, and then do the math. Get a balance sheet, get a cash flow statement, and know where you're at. That's pretty simple. So that's like if you were doing a financial goal. But then if you want to go somewhere, you need to know the number you're aiming for. And I think so often people pull arbitrary numbers or arbitrary income goals or arbitrary things out of their backside. And it sounds good. It feels good. They don't know. However, they don't know what the money's for. And so you set this financial goal, but there's an incongruence because you don't even know what you're working towards. And so I remember I had a number in my mind and it was like this arbitrary number and it always felt right, but I was like, there's something missing. There's something missing. And when one day I was in some random training and they're like, do the math on your big number, your financial freedom goal. And I did it. And I'm like, oh, I'm like it was like within a couple $1,000s. Like it was like nickels and dimes at that point because there were so many zeros in my goal. However, I was on point. But when I did the math, it solidified it for me. It was so much more clear. I had clarity. It wasn't just this, random number that intuition brought me. And I trusted it. However, I think when you can trust and then verify, there's more evidence, there's more substance. And at some point you need some kind of reference point.
Question with even with setting the financial goal, what if in example you gave, it sounds simple, but what if there's somebody who might have this like internal resistance towards it, or it's like a fear or a trigger or all these I can't and I shouldn't or whatever might be the stories? How to approach it when you authentically want to have that goal, set that goal, but there's all of these negatives that starts coming up?
With any goal, with anything that you do that you've never done before, that's gonna come up. And fear, like worry and doubt, they will lead to fear. And most of the stuff you make up in your head, you're making up your reality anyway. People give themselves anxiety. How? They mentally time travel into the future. They make something up that hasn't happened that's probably extremely destructive. And then you know what they do? They loop it, they loop it, they loop it, and they play it all day long. Kind of like, people that had traumas and dramas and they loop those and tell their grandma, their everybody in their world, and they wonder why it doesn't go away. Oh, and add like 10 years of therapy onto that. Like those are not constructive ways of working. So it's not easy to overcome the fear. However, knowing that if you want something new or different that you've never done before, that you don't have the skill set for yet, there are tools that you can start using to get yourself moving. And there's a visual metaphor that I like to use. It's like the idea of like building momentum. Like if you have one hand in front of the other, in order to take the backhand that's closest to you, you have to kind of pull back a little. It's almost like I got to go backwards before I can go forwards. But then if you stop and you stop halfway through the cycle, you're just like, okay. And then you have to pull the back one and rev up again, and then you stop. Then you pull it back and you rev up and stop. But if you pull back once and keep going, even if it's slow, you can keep going and you could speed up the momentum, you can slow it down, but you're in some sort of momentum. And it's that momentum that once you start to build it, and I think some people think momentum has to be super fast. It doesn't have to be super fast, but there has to be some consistency. Once you get on the bike, it's easier to just keep going. And we forget that. We think we have to do everything all at once. You don't have to do everything, but you do have to do one thing at a time and keep building the momentum and maintaining it. Keep building it, maintaining it, course correcting along the way. It's not nothing is complicated, but yes, it will be scary. Yes, you will have to overcome your fears. Yes, you will have to do things where you might face embarrassment, where you might fall on your face, where you might fail. You're probably going to fail. If you have anything that's reasonable or meaningful that you're working towards, if you don't fail, you're probably doing something wrong. Because you're never going to learn. You're never going to grow. If we were talking right before we recorded, you're like, when I started this podcast, I had a fear. They're like, oh, I have an accent. Is that going to be a problem speaking in English? I'm like, well, I totally understand you. Like, I didn't think there was any problem. And yet that was your perception. And now you've realized, you're like, well, it is what it is. People are listening. It's a good thing. I'm helping people and I'm making a difference in the world. And if we let those silly things get the best of us, we're never going to move forward in life. And we're just going to be comfortably uncomfortable. It's almost like I say, if you're sitting on a picket fence, like a pokey fence, and you're sitting on it, maybe your butt's going to get pokey or you're straddling it. That's not even right? Like sitting on a pokey fence is not comfortable. You have to pick a side. You can go back into comfort and safety and familiar, or you can just take the leap and go into the unfamiliar territory. They're both the same effort. It's the same effort. It's just one you're reverting back, and the other you're going into what is the unknown. But the more you do it, the more familiar it will be.
The other thing that I think I know it has helped me is to change the perception of how it's supposed to feel. Because a lot of
Mhm.
times we see online, everybody's like, oh, I changed my life. I feel so amazing. But when it comes to the actual process, for the most part, it doesn't necessarily feel that good. It is easier to go back to the old ways, and the process itself, as you go through that, especially I have seen that with people who have like trauma and they have to deconstruct literally their whole identity, reality,
Yeah.
everything. It doesn't feel good, and the work still needs to be done. But maybe can you talk a bit on that, like feeling good, not feeling good, but also the importance of our relationship with all emotions, not just the good emotions?
And I think this comes back to awareness, right? When you have awareness or a sense of understanding, so often when we're in a state of ignorance, or that doesn't mean you're dumb, it just means you don't know something. Like if you ask me to go play Minecraft, oh my God, like I see my son playing Minecraft. My son knows things. My son is absolutely appalled that I don't know all about his mods and things that he builds. Like I don't know these things. And then sometimes he pulls out engineering terms and they build levers and like pulley thing. Like I am not educated. I'm very ignorant. I know they're building. I think that's good. Beyond that, I have no concept and I don't want to learn. I have no desire. I want to support my son and tell him he's doing a great job, but I don't know. I'm totally ignorant. But if I had to go into like a Minecraft competition, I would probably suck. I would lose and fail against a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old. Like I have no idea. But the things I'm aware of, I've built a level of knowledge around. I've built a level of understanding around. I've done the study. Talk to me about, how to change a limiting belief. I could do that with my eyes closed and my hands tied behind my back. Talk about bridging language and linguistic patterns so people actually buy into them instead of feel like they're lying to themselves. That is like so easy. I can call BS on someone from a mile away. I used to be in the movement industry. I can see someone walking a block away and I'll be like, oh, dude, you need that exercise. And if you could just get a little more ankle movement, your back would feel so much better. I can see those things. They're just so easy, but I've done the study on them. And so when you take the time to learn about the thing, when you take the time to do the thing, a lot of the fear will it doesn't always go away, but you start building competence in those arenas. And I think when it comes to emotions, these are things that some people are super intimately familiar with. I think we're all familiar with them at a certain level, but we don't all articulate them, right? We all feel certain things, but some people don't have words to explain them. Some people try to shut them out and hide them in a closet. Some people bring them out for the world to see. Others post them all on social media. Others have to cry or use them to get attention from their family and loved ones. We all have emotions. We all use emotions, and they could be a really good thing. But as humans, we have to realize that all emotions are valid at the appropriate time. And that appropriate time might be different for me and for you. And we could have the same experience and we could have different emotional experiences based on our background and based on who we are and the things we're more naturally predisposed to. However, that doesn't make your experience any less important or valid than mine, and vice versa. So, what's really important is that we realize we have emotions. All are valid. However, you can't really be in an emotion for like much more than 45 to 90 seconds without looping a story, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or in between, because we're always flowing. We're kind of like a river. A river doesn't just sit still. Even a quiet river, it just moves a little less. But if you really take the time to analyze and assess your emotions, and you can go neurotic for this, like every 15 to 30 minutes, like, how am I feeling now? What emotion am I feeling right this exact second? It's not going to be the same thing all day. And you're going to notice you change emotional experiences. Someone makes you laugh and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm just like hysterical. I'm peeing my pants laughing. I'm I just think life is so funny. Maybe you're overjoyed. Maybe you're crying tears of joy. Maybe you're in disbelief, right? Disbelief can be great if it's like super, super funny. And then maybe you'll feel curious 5 minutes later. Maybe you'll step into an element of intrigue, right? Curiosity and intrigue, they sound kind of the same, but they're different states. So some are emotions, some are more states of being. However, we're always flowing with our energy. Nothing is stagnant. If you really think about it, nothing is truly standing still in the world. At a microscopic level, your body is in constant motion no matter how still you get. And that's how your emotions work.
That is, as you were speaking, it brought me up something that I read this morning in a book that I'm reading, where she was talking about like an experiment where they would select people that would have this perception that they are lucky in life, and then they would have people that are unlucky, and they would have these like this task where they would have to count the number of faces in their journal or something like that. And the unlucky ones, it would take them a couple of minutes to count them all. The lucky ones, they would find that there's a note that said the actual number is this, go on to the next page or something like that. And then in the next page, they would see that you're done with the assignment. You can get your $250 like prize or whatever and move on with your day. And it was very interesting that people that would identify or that would have this perception of life that they are unlucky, they wouldn't see any of that, while people who did have that perception, they would. Can you talk a bit more on that, like the glasses that we're wearing as we walk and live our lives and the importance of those?
Yeah, thank you. I want to see that study. So send it over to me, please, because that would be amazing. I'd love to. I haven't heard of that. Basically there's a part of your brain called the reticular activation system that acts as a filter. It what you focus on expands, and where your attention goes, your energy flows, and ultimately results show. So if you're paying attention to certain things, you're going to be more naturally drawn to them. And we are fundamentally wired to either focus on or more naturally focus on good things and positives, or things that are like away froms, or like you said, the bad things. However, it's a safety mechanism. For most of us, we're going to notice the fears and the things that are wrong in order to protect ourselves from lions, tigers, and bears in the wild a few hundred years ago when we were hunters and gatherers. That's not the case anymore, but our brain does notice those things as danger signs. However, if you've practiced doing something, if you've practiced looking for the good. So I'm pretty naturally wired to notice what's wrong, notice deficiencies, fix problems. Like, I go to a concert and some people love it. I go and I'm like, ooh, this. Like, I used to be in the arts, and I'm like, I don't go to the arts to enjoy it. I enjoy it when I can deconstruct an entire performance and look at the structure and the strategy. But I'm looking for very different things because I'm conditioned to put together shows. I'm conditioned to design shows. I want to go there to learn to create a different kind of show, even though I don't work on stages in those capacities anymore. Um, so what where your priorities are, the priorities you have, your reticular activation system is going to start noticing. So um, if you want to condition yourself to start noticing more good, train yourself to notice more good, and you will start. Like, it may not be natural at first. One of the things that I started doing is I have a little success journal, and some of my clients use it for wins. I don't want to write wins. Wins don't help me. But what does help me is at the end of the day, if I write good things today, and I do this most days, maybe not every day, but most days, I'll take it to bed and I'm like, good things today. And my son will be reading beside me. And then I'll do good things today. And sometimes we'll share. And then, and, but if I do that before bed, that gets me to focus on the good things. And because I focus on the good things and I keep practicing, like this is what I do for work, I can very easily identify those good things. And I've come up with the belief system and the evidence that good things just happened to me. But it wasn't natural. I grew up like saying horrible things to myself. I grew up in like history of abuse, poverty mindset, the things I would do and say to myself, the things that I had experienced, they weren't that tragic. I mean, I had some dramas and traumas, but they really, in the grand scheme of things, were like such minor things compared to what so many people go through. And I would loop them and cycle them and think, oh my God, my world is so tragic. And it was until I realized nobody cares. And I'm like, well, clearly this isn't getting me the attention I'm desperately seeking. Maybe I need to find another way. I guess I could start noticing the good things in life, the better things in life. Other people can, maybe I can try to.
That is very important to also, I think, that intentional practice of doing it, because naturally we will focus on the negatives, especially if we're programmed that way. And the moment we start to look at positives, and also I for me it's been interesting when it comes to the positives, that there was a time that even the amount of work that I'm doing now or something like that, it would feel like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. But now I literally had it a couple of days ago. I went out of sauna and I was like, I think I was like right out of the cold shower after sauna, and I was thinking, I love my life so much because there's so many growth opportunities, so many things where I can
Mhm.
challenge myself, get out of comfort zone, explore myself, and understand myself at more like deeper levels, that there was a time that this reality I would not want, because I would be like, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to face that. I don't want to overcome that. But now there's different perspective of, oh, this is my chance to actually explore and learn more about myself, because there's very little, if anything, that I will learn when I'm in my comfort zone. But
Mhm.
it takes some practice to transition that mindset and perspective. One thing that has helped me is to be around people with that mindset and kind of observe how they think,
Yeah.
because I would read books as well and it would help a bit, but there's something different when you observe somebody, like a real person, the way they
Yeah.
think, that they perceive things. It would have like really profound impact on me.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's really powerful. And so often when you starve the things of attention that don't serve you, they kind of disappear. And it might be naive. I mean, I live in a pretty happy-go-lucky bubble for the most part. Like, things go really well in my life. Are there things that could be better? Sure. But for the most part, like, my life's really good. I've had so many blessings and opportunities that have been handed to me on a silver platter. And I've also realized that the more I notice them, the more I focus on them, the more time I spend dancing with those dreams, romanticizing, acknowledging them, the more constructive they are in my life versus the times where I used to dwell and things would just go wrong all the time. But I started starving that of attention. And there's a few people that have passed into and out of my life, and some are still in my life, but I do my best to like spend way less time with them. I just starve those ideas or starve those conversations of attention. And I know there's terrible things going on in the world. And I've also realized that the most terrible things that have ever happened to me have also been my greatest blessings. And I'm like, I know in my heart, and that doesn't justify actions or behaviors or global issues. However, I do know that everything happens for a reason. And when you choose to find the good, you will be blessed. And I know, like, I attract really good things into my life, and I'm not afraid of bad things happening, like government, politics, like all that. I don't want to be in that conversation. So I tune those things out. Yes, I am naive. Okay, but I'm happy. And things just keep working out for me. So I'm okay with that. Is there a time where things might change? Maybe, I don't know. However, I do know that the more I pay attention and when I put my attention on things that actually make me feel good, that actually feel aligned, that actually are aligned. And sometimes what is aligned and what feels aligned are different because like you were saying, right now you value that growth, but before growth used to be scary. So is it the growth itself that is your primary value, or is it maybe the excitement of newness or a story that you might have experienced in a very different way? And so for me, I know growth and learning is just like that's been a consistent thread since preschool. Like my sister went into kindergarten, and what did I do? I got her phonics sheets ready and I wrote all those things by hand and made the straight lines and the little dotted lines because we didn't have a photocopier back then. And I tried to prepare her for kindergarten, and then I tried to create choreography for her to get her ready for dance. And I did the same with my little brother. Like, I don't think they cared. They didn't appreciate that, but that was like my desperate need to help them embody their own personal growth at the level I knew how back then. So,
And I think another thing is that I have seen that for me, even the way I would perceive growth, it has changed because before, for many years, I would just consume. I would consume
yeah.
information. I would be the know-it-all who knew everything, but I wouldn't be living any of it because it was uncomfortable to get out of the comfort zone, or I would have the programs that would keep me stuck. And then I would have like a friend come along and kind of call me out on it and keep me accountable. And through that, which I think is also very important to have people in your life who will tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you
Yes.
want to hear. And through those experiences, I started to take action, and I started to learn that, oh, so all the stuff that I read, the books, they are like manuals. Those are the things that I can actually go and apply. And I started to perceive them way differently because I would be stuck. And it's something that I have also seen with, even like with my generation, where we can get stuck in the online world where we think we have to look certain way instead of being certain way. Because if you are certain way, it will come across anyways. But it's a challenge to wear all these masks, or try to be certain way and try to keep up with what everybody else is doing or the perception you want to uphold. And a lot of times it can kind of distract ourselves from ourselves. I understood it last year when I was doing, I was training for half Ironman. So I would train a lot. Like I would train like 20 hours a week.
Wow.
Because I signed up 90 days before. Usually it takes 6 to 8 months to train. and and I would be training so much, and a lot of the time I would just be with myself. And that's when I realized that we have become so distracted from ourselves that we a lot of times look for answers anywhere but within, and we don't even trust ourselves anymore. Can you maybe talk a bit more on the importance of relationship with yourself and trusting yourself, connecting with yourself, especially at a time when we can get very distracted from being with ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I feel these things, they're so good. I love my phone. I'm so blessed that I have access to the world's information at my fingertips. And it is a huge distraction. It has conditioned us to live in a distracted society. More kids and adults and just people in general have more mental health conditions these days and more health conditions. We are supposed to be so freaking smart, and we have access to the best information in the world that we've ever had, yet we're not applying it. And I think one of the things that you said, you wanted to make this really practical. There's two things that I heard I don't know why I'm referencing so many trainings in this podcast, but two trainings that I went to. There's two things that really helped me, and I teach them and I teach them and I teach them over and over again. One was study, do, study, do, study, do. And so you study and then you go apply it. And then you study and then you go apply it. And you study and you apply it. And then sometimes you hit the pause button and you evaluate. I've added that. You got to evaluate what you're doing because sometimes it's not actually working. So study, do, study, do, study, do, evaluate, pay attention. Study, do, study, do, study, do, evaluate, pay attention. Study, do, study, do, study, do, evaluate, pay attention. There's not much more to it than that. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's in your profession, whether it's human behavior, whether it's finance, whether it's health. Go learn the thing, go do the thing. Because as you do the thing, you'll gain the experience. You might not be any good, but you're at least going to have a new relationship to the thing. Like I did parkour with my son this summer, and then I went back to a parkour class with my son because we gave him a little treat after his Christmas concert just last week. And my husband was there. I'm like, you're going to do a class with me. So I made my husband do it. And he's like, oh no, he thought it was sketchy. And there's like two grown adults with all these like 13 and 16-year-old kids that flip and do crazy stuff. And we're trying to do our own little flips. And it was very humbling, but we weren't great, but we had a good time. We had a good time. But had we not done that, it's one thing to watch the YouTube videos or to study the mechanics, and it's a whole other thing to experience it because you start to know what these things mean. You know what distance is. You know how to push off. So study, do, study, do, study, do, evaluate. Whatever you're doing. The other thing, I think this was actually a ClickFunnels training. I don't know, like years ago, I ended up in a random masterclass, and there was a chick that said, she's like, we had no money, we couldn't do anything, but the one thing we did know how to do was pause the tape. We didn't have a choice. We heard the instructions and we stopped the video until we did the action. And then we listened, and then we stopped the video until we did the next action. And so often, like you said, we consume. And I think consumption is great because it does put more in there. There's times like if I'm working out, I'm not going to stop the tape for everything. But when you're actually studying, like you need to sit down and actually study and really think things through and pause the tape in order to take the action. If sometimes we'll read. So this is an example. I have morning success calls that I do with my clients every single day because I knew I told them what to do. Some of them did it. They did great. Most of them didn't. And so I'm like, every day I'll get together with you and I'll take the lid off my head. You'll see what's going on in here while I do my own little routine. Ask anything. I'm an open book. And so we got together at 6:30 a.m. and we did this for a month as an experiment. And then they're like, Larisa, you got to keep doing this because this is changing our lives. So we've been doing it for 4.5, almost 5 years. So we have morning calls. Sometimes we'll read a paragraph or a chapter of a book, and that's more like consumption. There's some interesting stuff, but other days we'll dissect one paragraph for an hour. We'll look up the words in the dictionary. We'll go, what does this word mean to me? How have I experienced this phrase in the past? How am I experiencing it like right now in my life? How am I experiencing it right in this second? How might I experience it in the future? What would I like to see with like this one tiny phrase or word that we might read? And so we'll ask questions, we'll explore, and we'll go on a journey with one powerful, profound paragraph. Or as we'll read a book slowly, and we might take 3 days to go through a chapter that takes 15 minutes to read. But then when they ask a reflective question, we pause and we actually answer it. Like, imagine that. This is not rocket science. Like, we do very scientific things. However, this is what it's based on. It's like we pause the tape and we answer the question, which doesn't sound complicated. And you're like, I want practical things. Practical things are stop the tape if you hear something. Even in this discussion, if you hear something, pause, write it down, go journal, go put a note in your calendar, go send the text message, like do the thing that must be done and get into the application.
I love this. And it's one of the biggest lessons that I have learned from some of my mentors is that most things actually are simple. And one thing that I wanted to talk about is consistency, because it's one of the things that when I was doing more coaching, it would be a big hurdle for a lot of people. Um, what are some of the main things that you have seen get in the way of being consistent, and how to actually start building up that consistency and with that momentum and so on?
Yeah. You know what? That's such a great question. I think I've heard there's so much more. I feel like so many more people are craving consistency these days, especially this past season. That was a really big thing I noticed in participants in our events. Like, people want more consistency. That it's always been a problem, but I feel like they're self-identifying that so much more in this season of where the world is. And I love the question of what gets in the way of consistency, because I don't think I've actually thought about that or answered that. Ultimately, if you want to be consistent in something, you can't try to be consistent at everything. And when you deliberately choose what you're consistent in, and then you identify as a consistent person, I think there's some things I'm not consistent in, and I'm okay with that. But the things I commit to, I am very consistent with many things, and I am a consistent person. But identity, it's the image that you see yourself as. And I think because so many people have so many things they're not consistent with, and they're focused on that, right? Where attention goes, energy flows, and results show. They're like, oh, I can't do this consistently. Consistency. I'm not consistent. I'm not a consistent person. That's a terrible identity. Terrible. Because if you want to be consistent, you better start identifying, like, what are you actually consistent? I consistently brush my teeth. I consistently put on lipstick when I do podcasts. I consistently tie my shoes because I don't like the feeling of like loose, floppy runners out on the street. I used to not tie my shoes, but now I consistently tie my shoes. There's silly things that are meaningless to most people. However, if you can even identify some basic things you're consistent at, you are a consistent person. And then you might be like, but it's not the stuff that matters, right? All of a sudden you're contradicting yourself. But I'm not consistent with what matters. Well, pick one thing that you're going to double down on. So this summer, I met with a friend, and he'd always worked out, but this summer we hadn't seen each other for 3 years, and we did a walk and talk. And he's like, instead of a coffee shop or a lunch or whatever, do you mind if we walk? And I'm like, like the most brilliant thing. It was like music to my ears. I'm like, yes, I don't like restaurants. I don't like sitting. I'm an antsy person. I would love to walk. And so we walked, and he told me, he's like, I do my best to walk 15,000 steps a day. And I'm like, oh. And then he told me about his fitness regimen as part of our talk, because we walked a lot that day. And that one little conversation got me to look at my step tracker on my phone, and I go, ooh, okay, I am not doing 15,000 steps. It was like 1,200, 1,500, 1,700. One day in the last 2 weeks, I went over 2,200, and I'm not like, that's not a good thing. And I realized, I'm like, no wonder I'm feeling so sluggish and tired. So I committed to minimum 5,000 a day, aiming for 10. And what did I get obsessed with? I didn't try to get obsessed with everything, but I got obsessed with my 10,000 steps. And that gave me more energy. That gave me more fuel. That gave me a better mental mindset. And all of a sudden, other things in my business, I started becoming more consistent with. Imagine that. But I tracked the steps. I became obsessed with the steps. Even in business, you can't be obsessed with everything, but what are the 1, 2, maybe 3 KPIs that you're looking at? But if there's like one KPI and you look at everyone on the team and how they're contributing to that KPI, they might have their own parts of it that they're contributing to, but you get obsessed with that and look at how you can optimize it and be consistent with it and 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 make it better. Focus on it for a season. It's going to make a difference, because your business is 90 days behind you. Your fitness regimen is like the results in your fitness and health routines. They're all 90 days behind you. Like, things have a, a period of time. You need to invest before you're going to see the rewards.
I love what you said about choosing one thing. It's something that I was a couple of years ago when I did a 5-day challenge. I had this metaphor where we don't clean our house with like cleaning every room at the same time. You just go in 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there. And I feel like that's kind of what we try to do a lot of the times when we it's like we want to have everything in our lives like fixed yesterday. But at the same time, like when you have this focus towards, I will choose this one room, I will go into that room, and sometimes that room can be messy where you might actually initially just need to have some time to just look at it and just process what's happening there and accept it and face it. And then sometimes you even need to look at it from a distance before you can get any closer. But it's a process. And then once you start to clean it out, you start to, like, to what you said, it starts to over pour in other areas as well. And you start to feel empowered from tackling this, seeing progress here instead of scattering, trying to fix everything and fixing nothing. And then it's even more frustrating. But with the other thing that I'm curious about, if you have any ideas on or suggestions on how to make, because I think another challenge that I have seen is that a lot of people try, or maybe they end up overcomplicating when it comes to consistency, because they now are at this painful point where they're like, that's it. Like, I don't like my health. I don't like this. Even if they choose just one area, now they just make this like endless list of things they need to do every single day, which in some ways they set themselves up for failure, because then they can focus on, see, it's only 3 days, I'm already failing, whatever might be the case.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to simplify consistency, or maybe make it a bit easier to actually stay consistent?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that especially with my breakthrough clients, it's mandatory as part of their tasking for 90% of them, is I have a daily success habit tracker. And I will use it for periods and then I'll stop using it. So I don't use it all the time, but I find every few months I'm like, I need a good reinstallation of some of these habits, because I do them, but then I'd like to check in on them. And so we choose habits, or we choose tasks in the area of like mindset, like getting your mindset, getting your energy together. So the other category is relationships. And then the last category is like goal achieving activities or work or things that are like constructive and useful, where you feel like you're contributing to the world. And so every person has their own task. So one might be like doing a certain type of breath work just to calm the nervous system. It might be journaling at the end of the day, saying what's good, right? Just like that's one of my things that I do. Maybe it'll be no. And one of the things I like about what's good that's better than gratitude for some people is sometimes you can't get in a grateful state, but you can force yourself to put something that's good. You can force a what's good, but when you force a gratitude, you get resentful. And I just want to like say, shove it, give it my middle finger. I'm like, I'm not grateful. I don't care. And that, like, not so much anymore, but I've gone through those phases where I just don't care about gratitude, which is terrible to say. However, when I write what's good, what happens naturally, the little brain, it just starts to say, oh yeah, that is really good. That's so cool. I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful. Like I just naturally talk back with gratitude, but I don't force it. And so I find that's like the nicest entry point into gratitude, when you are not in a super grateful spirit and you're not ready to, acknowledge that. And so those are little tricks I found. Like I know what works and I know what doesn't, because I've done it so much. So find something for yourself, for your growth, and track it for your relationships. Like, did I attempt to connect to someone today? Did I attempt to compliment someone today? Like, those kinds of things. Like, it doesn't have to be huge things, but so often we get lonely. And if we're not doing our part in relationships, regardless of what other people are doing, we go a little cuckoo. And then goal achieving activities, maybe it's contact 5 people a day, record a podcast episode, promote my podcast every day. Okay. If your audience is into podcasting, then that would be relevant. And so 3 items towards my podcast, right? Go into a Facebook group today, but there would be some clear goal achieving activity that you need to do. And so the difference with this tracker is it's not just did I do it or did I not? It follows Carol Dweck's growth mindset mentality. So it's, you rank yourself and you ask, did I do my best? And I've rated myself in different ways. Sometimes I'll give clients like on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, like how far on the scale of did I do my best? 1 is half-assing it, 5 or 10 is like off the charts. I've also done it with myself where 1 makes me feel like a failure. However, I did like a -2, -1, 0, 1 +1, +2, because sometimes I'm just like, ooh, crappy attitude. And so I'd be like, yeah, terrible attitude towards this today. And it was like a -2, but then something else was a +2. And so it's not about did you do it or did you not? It's about where on the spectrum are you? Because we talked about emotions. Sometimes they dip, sometimes they rise. You're Imagine the days I didn't work out back then were always lower rankings. The days I didn't work out or I cheated my workout were lower rankings. And then all of a sudden, the days I did a 10-minute metabolic workout, all of a sudden everything went up. And I'm like, okay, well, ding, 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 ding. I think I better do this little 10-minute workout. And that's part of what I do pretty much every day. If I'm not at the gym, I'm doing my 10-minute metabolic workout, not for fitness, but so everything else just works out better. So I can be alert, so I can have energy, so I can feel good. It's not about 6-pack abs for that little 10-minute workout. It's just so I can function. And so I think tracking it, the simple thing is track it, track it, track it. Find something that works for you. Try a couple things, but if it's not working, it doesn't mean it's not right. It just means you might need a slightly different way. And that's why I wanted to give you that example. I hope that's clear because like I've done 1 to 5, I've done 1 to 10. For me, my optimum is -2 to +2. And there's no right way, there's no wrong way, but for some people they love 1 to 5. For some people they need more numbers. They need up to 10. Like do it your way. I think this is where you have to start trusting yourself. And that's what we talked about way, way, way back at the beginning of this episode is self-trust. How do you trust yourself? You pay attention. How do you trust yourself? You listen to that little voice inside your head and you actually follow it and give it a shot. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, but you're probably going to be more on the mark than you think you are.
I love so many things you mentioned because I do very similar thing where I have my habits. I call them baby steps.
Yeah.
Because initially when you start, I try to tell people make it so small it feels ridiculous not to do it. Because
Yeah.
initially the goal is to get it done and start to get in a habit of getting things done. And
Yeah.
I also like what you said about you start to notice patterns because a lot of times we expect we will start day 1 perfect, but if you start to take those steps, you will notice patterns. Oh, like I have lower score when I don't exercise. Okay, note to myself that if I exercise, like it's a pattern, you start to notice them. So there's a lot that we can get from the tracking of things because we
Yeah.
start to see things, we start to learn, and then we have something to work with moving forward. All right, so I feel like we could talk forever. This is so interesting. So much quality that I can resonate with a lot of things that you were talking, and I have seen a lot of them work in my life as well. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that's getting a lot out of this. But before I ask you the last question, where can people connect with you, learn about you, and what you do?
Yeah. Best place is probably I have a book that is it's Stop Procrastinating Your Life Away, Discover the Secrets to More Time, Money, Freedom. So if you go look for this book, you will find my website and then you can connect with us through there. So it's at stopprocrastinatingbook.com. And I think so often we really don't. When I first wrote this book, I noticed that I had big dreams and big intentions, and I didn't follow through on them. And I noticed a lot of other people had big dreams and big intentions, and they didn't follow through on them. And it wasn't that they were just procrastinating on little things; they were procrastinating on the most important things in their life. And it's one thing. How you do anything is how you do everything. So you might think you're just procrastinating on this deliverable that's due at the end of the week or at the end of the day or an assignment or something that you meant to do but didn't. But you're probably also procrastinating on the most important things in your life, those big goals and dreams. And procrastination is suicide of your dreams on the installment plan. So when I heard that, I was just like, I want to personally rev myself up and also dramatically motivate so many other people out there that are in this consumption world, hoping, wishing, dreaming, but not necessarily moving forward with wisdom or a plan. And so this book is not just a nice read, it's actually meant to be read and worked through. It's like a workbook. You take a journal, you do the exercises, but if you go through it and actually do the exercises, it will absolutely change your life and get your butt up off that picket fence. So it's stopprocrastinatingbook.com, but that's probably the best place people can find me. We're on all the social media platforms. I can give you those links if you prefer that, but it's a free resource. We give the whole book away for free. Download it, actually use it. There's tons of bonus materials and things available, but those that have gone through it have changed their life, but they didn't just consume it because it's not, I mean, it's fine. It's a nice read, but where it's going to make the difference is if you study and do, study and do, study and do, and hit the pause button to actually do the exercises and implement as you go.
You literally have the perfect thing to do to apply what we have been talking. Learn, apply, and then revisit. So go get the book and then you can actually practice these skills. So last question I have for you. What is one piece of wisdom you're still learning to live?
One piece of wisdom is still learning to live. Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think, I don't know if I have the right word. It's not necessarily embracing. It's like a cross between embracing, surrender, allowing. I feel like I've definitely got a lot better at that. And I have a lot of self-trust. I have a lot of faith. I have a lot of belief. However, there's like this undertone of like wholehearted, embracing, allowing, surrender. It's there, but it's still a very deliberate work in progress. So I think that's
Being.
it. Maybe beingness. I feel like I'm good at being. I think it might be beingness. I don't know. I'm gonna chew on that, but it's definitely something that's been percolating. I don't have words for it, so I wish I could articulate it better, but maybe next time we talk, we'll have some profound wisdom that comes out of this conversation.
Well, thank you, Larisa, and thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And to all of the listeners, if you're an expert with 20 plus years of experience and you want to come on and share your wisdom, there'll be information below. And if you need help to start a podcast, produce it, or grow it, there'll be information below as well. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.